Xbox and the new CEO Aisha have released a few statements in the last week. Even though there are positives, I'm still as worried as I was previously, having the same fears after doing deep research that only gets stronger the more I read on, especially for Xbox's long-term future in gaming. So to start, we're going to inform you about the long-term consequences of the statement, the good, as we analyse it. Then we're going to show the negatives that could happen with the choices made. And finally, end with a critical conclusion based on the research, evidence, and analysis we produce on Xbox's long-term future. Initially, I think she's taking the right steps. She's mentioned in her statement a focus to expand into China, emerging markets, and mobile-first audiences, with the new Helix console being focused as well on console and PC games. So as a result, Xbox will bond and connect with newer generations as it becomes more accessible to all age ranges and different people who have different devices. Long term, this means a growing and larger player base for Xbox to utilize for more revenue, which is much needed for Xbox after their gaming acquisitions and Sony's larger dominance. To further emphasize the need for a solid economic gaming model, she stated that she'll return the business to durable growth with strong cost discipline and fortify Game Pass with a clear differentiation and sustainable economics, which really puts an emphasis on the company having a more stable checkbook. As the last few years, with the acquisitions that rock the financial boat, a stable model means less layoffs and less stress for companies to produce games of quality instead of rushing to make sure that their game comes out. It's a long-term plan and it's a hopeful message and a hopeful response to previous failures. Furthermore, she's shown an awareness that Xbox Series S and X have a problem, their hardware differences. She mentions Xbox needs to be improved for development, and the differences between Series S and X hardware has been a huge problem. Games have had to been delayed, like Baldur's Gate 3 for example, was delayed for a few months, while releasing on PlayStation a few months earlier. Another reason Xbox lagged behind Sony was because developers preferred to develop for their consoles, with some studios choosing not to release on Xbox entirely. But arguably the smartest thing her and her team have put forth is the desire to push into new markets. We've mentioned earlier she wanted to push for China and the PC market and the mobile market, where there's a clear desire to capture an audience which is more focused on online gaming, which is highlighted by her saying our new North Star will be daily active players, which connects to this article here showing how the mobile market is 67% of the market in China and consoles are just 3%. I know in Asia there's been a rise in mobile gaming, and I know in some places in East Asia, I think Korea, and this is only words I've heard online, nothing solidly researched, but what I've heard is that people prefer to go to gaming cafes and rent a PC there over buying one as it's much cheaper and it's much more comfortable. So, with this new plan that Xbox CEO has put in place, it could be very, very lucrative and better compared to the previous years of Google Stadia, where streaming games just wasn't a viable market. Whereas now you can capture a bigger audience, especially when China specifically doesn't have their own gaming console. So, putting the Xbox as a way to play both PC and Xbox games could be a great way to incentivize millions and millions of new customers to buy the Helios project. Or they could stream it from their phones or use the PC cafes, and instead of buying consoles and devices, they'll rent game time using the subscription model Xbox offers them and buy microtransactions. Previously under Phil Spencer, Microsoft had first pick at Genshin Impact and all of the games the company would make that would follow afterwards, and sensationally they passed on it, missing out on an entire market and one of the biggest revenue makers of all time. Now it looks like that they won't make this mistake again. With their new approach, they will tap into the Asian market much more frequently, and potentially, using this new business model, they could garner a solid audience and bring ripples across Sony's dominance. But that's also where the problems start to creep up. The mess Phil Spencer had to clear up was Microsoft's obsession with injecting the Xbox One with entertainment, cloud services, and streaming TV shows. It was a device disconnected from its audience, with features they didn't want, and it was spread too thin on the things they did want. Will Aisha recreate those mistakes? When she builds this console, when she builds the next roadmap for Xbox, will it follow along for the gamers that want to play it, for the loyal fans? Or will it spread itself too thin with live service features, with online features, and a focus much more on the Chinese market? So even though gaming seems to be key, the worry is the wide variety of platforms and a focus on daily active players, which may imply a focus on live service games as well, could clearly become a case of spreading too thin and not focusing on quality that gamers want. Many of Xbox's exclusives could also be affected by this change, orienting themselves towards bringing in an active user base. So, along with the large plans that they already have, building a lineup of successful exclusives that interact with streamers, grow a consistent user base, and are brilliant games to play over the next 5 to 10 years will be no easy task at all. While now juggling a new cloud based player base may require live service over one time play games. Furthermore, to back up my worries, when Phil attempted to buy Activision as part of a long term plan of strong exclusive titles, Microsoft bean counters imposed a 30% profit margin target on the division. This, according to those in the know, is far above the industry average between 17 to 20%. 17 to 22%. Sony, which has significantly improved its profit margins since concluding its acquisition of Bungie, achieved around a 16% profit margin in quarter one of 2025. This obviously gives you a good indication of how big the demands of Xbox were. Microsoft rules on Xbox snapped up Phil's plans and were sure that they led them to selling exclusives to garner short-term revenues, for using Xbox as a vehicle for quick money, leaving Phil no choice and no ability to continue his long-term plans or give himself a fighting chance. So how will Aisha handle this? What happens when she goes for a big money move to ripple Sony's dominance? Will Microsoft show patience and a measured response? Or will they eject her brutally like they did with Phil? How much time will she gain when she makes a big move or a large mistake? All her positive long-term plans could be ripped up by Microsoft in a second, and that may be the biggest challenge she has to face. There are a lot of ifs and buts in the new CEO's career, as it's a ginormous task, and I think she's only about 60 days in, and her team have large goals that spread across the world. My biggest worry is in an attempt to gain a large user base and become head-to-head rivals again with Sony, they'll spread their net too wide, and at a serious fault or a big move for her team, Microsoft will be ruthless and impatient and cut the cord like they did with Phil.